starting today. Mom is moving in with us. She's your mother-in-law, so take good care of her.
Without any discussion or notice, my husband Huey brought home his mother, Isadora, announcing that she'd be living with us. To make matters worse, he had decided to turn my room into Isadora's room and dumped my belongings in the hallway. Where am I supposed to sleep now that my room's gone?
You've got the hallway, haven't you?
He said with a smirk as I turned to face him, incredulous. My name is Gina, and I'm a 38-year-old housewife. 5 years ago, I lost both my parents in a sudden car accident. Having no siblings or relatives, I found myself utterly alone. Craving the connection that comes with family, I was desperate to get married. That's when I met Huey, my current husband. His unwavering commitment, self-assuredness, and above all, his kindness drew me in. We dated, got married 3 months ago, and have been living together since. I used to work as a nurse, but overworked myself to the point of falling seriously ill. The diagnosis? Burnout from excessive work. When I told Huey, he said,
I've been worried you're pushing yourself too hard. Your health is what matters most. Let me handle work. Why don't you wait for me at home?
His concern for my well-being touched my heart. Though hesitant to leave my nursing career, I knew I could return any time thanks to my credentials. So I quit my job and decided to be a full-time housewife. But that's when things began to change between Huey and me. He started to restrict what I could do, saying it was for my own good. But it escalated. Before I knew it, he began to control every aspect of my life. Feeling obligated because he was supporting me financially, I adopted the mindset that I must obey him. Life went on like this for about 6 months, until one day, I returned home from grocery shopping to find Isadora there. I greeted her, thinking she had come for a visit. Heading to my room to put away the groceries, I found all my belongings dumped in the hallway. Confused, I stood there until Huey came to explain. My in-laws divorced when my husband was little, and he was raised by Isadora, his mom. He hadn't seen his father in years and was very attached to Isadora. For quite some time, he'd been planning to have her move in with us, unbeknownst to me. I was stunned to hear that these plans had already been in motion. Just then, my husband dropped another bombshell.
Mom has been doing everything by herself for years. She's getting up there in age, and I want to make her life easier. So, starting tomorrow, make food for 3 people, okay? Take care of all the household chores, and don't bother Mom with them. Got it?
Before I could fully understand what he was saying, he added unapologetically that since there's no room for Isadora in this house, she'll be using my room, and my belongings were tossed into the hallway because they were in the way. When I asked where I would sleep, both my husband and Isadora just laughed. Saying there was no other place but the hallway. As crazy and unfair as this sounded, my mind quickly became foggy, filled with thoughts that I should fully support this and take care of Isadora. I accepted my husband's ridiculous proposal, saying, All right, I understand. Let's get along starting today. After all, I owe everything to my husband, and it's only natural to extend gratitude to Isadora who raised him. I was enthusiastic about meeting their demands. Living with Isadora, both she and my husband began to criticize every little thing I did. You're terrible at washing dishes. Are you really that stupid?
Today's meal is too salty. Are you trying to kill us?
I became the target of their verbal abuse. So there I was, mentally and physically drained, ultimately spending my nights sleeping in the hallway. I didn't recognize the absurdity of my situation. Whenever I felt tired, I blamed myself for not doing enough and obediently went on with my day. Then one winter day, Isadora ordered me to clean every corner of the house and prepare a dinner worthy of a luxury hotel for someone special she was bringing home. I spent the day scouring the house and shopping for ingredients, frantically researching recipes to create an array of lavish dishes. Once the meal was ready, I was told to stay in the hallway so as not to bother the guests. I complied without question, making sure to stay out of sight. From the laughter that occasionally leaked from the living room, I gathered that Isadora's guest was her current boyfriend. As the night wore on, I heard that the guest would be staying overnight. Isabella told me to wait in the kitchen, adding, "Gina, if Louis finds out you sleep in the hallway, he'll be shocked. It's not a good look. Could you just sleep in the kitchen tonight, okay?" I was used to listening to my husband, so I went to check with him. He seemed to be in a bad mood from work and yelled, "Don't come in here for every little thing. I don't want to see your face," before hitting me. Being hit was nothing new, so I left quickly to avoid making him angrier. Since I couldn't confirm where to sleep with my husband, I decided to sleep in the hallway as usual. Early in the morning, I was awakened by a surprised male voice and looked up to see a man staring down at me. I didn't see his face yesterday, but it's probably Louis, Isadora's boyfriend.
"What are you doing here? Do you sleep in this house?"
Caught off guard, I told him the truth. I'm Huey's wife and usually sleep in the hallway. Seeing my nonchalant attitude towards the situation, Louis paused, then asked for my contact information. When I told him I didn't have a cell phone because my husband manages it, he suggested meeting at a nearby cafe when the sun comes up. He asked me to come secretly, without telling my husband or Isadora. His serious gaze convinced me to agree. Later, Louis went home, seen off by Isadora and my husband. As the sun rose, I told my family I was going grocery shopping and headed to the cafe where Louis was already waiting. We went inside. While waiting for our drinks, Louis said,
"Actually, I've invited another person today."
Shortly after, a woman he knows arrives. "Nice to meet you. I'm Eileen. I've known Louis for a long time." Eileen was an excellent listener, and we had a lively chat. It had been a while since I talked to someone other than my husband and Isadora. I realized I had almost forgotten how to communicate, and I had a great time. On the way home, Eileen, sensing something was off, kindly asked me about my life. I told her the truth, and she invited me for tea again the next day. I agreed. For several days, our morning tea and casual chats continued. As I spoke to Eileen in the cafe, I started to feel something was wrong with my current life. I became emotional during our talks. It was then that I finally realized my current environment was unjust. Eileen softly smiled, gently wiping away my tears with a handkerchief. It turns out Eileen is a mental health professional. Louis had noticed something was off and asked her to come to listen. Eileen explained that if she had immediately pointed out that my husband and Isadora were the issue, I might have closed off. So she took the time to support me, helping me slowly realize what was going on. At first, I listened to you because it was a job required, but now it's different. I want to help Gina as a friend. If Gina wants our help, we're here, always ready to lend a hand. Hearing these warm words, I can't stop the tears from flowing. Eileen gently rubs my back as I continue to cry uncontrollably. When I finally stop crying, it's time to part ways with Eileen and head home. As we say goodbye, she assures me, "We're always on your side." On the way home, my clouded thoughts finally clear, filling me with a newfound sense of relief. That night, when my husband starts complaining about my cooking again, for the first time, I retort, "If it's too bland for you, add your own seasoning." My husband is momentarily surprised, but quickly turns red with rage.
"How dare you speak to me like that?"
he shouts. Isadora, who's already there, starts to get angry as well, and both she and my husband yell,
"I want a divorce."
"Get out of this house now!" Thinking that it might be a good thing for them to kick me out, I simply nod my head as usual. While packing, my husband orders me to be ready for a shower and make the next meal more delicious. To all of this, I reply as always, "It's because I'm a bad wife." and finish packing my minimal belongings. My husband, annoyed that things didn't go his way, lets out a loud sigh and grabs a beer from the kitchen. Ignoring him, I take my bags to the front door. Isadora follows me, letting out an obvious sigh. If you're really sorry, I might forgive you. Now go do the dishes. No, I'm leaving because my husband told me to. Upon hearing this, Isadora goes to call my beer-drinking husband. Ignoring them both, I walk out of the house and into the waiting taxi, putting distance between myself and that home. Inside the taxi, I wonder why I'd ever listened to such people. Maybe unconsciously, I didn't want to sever family ties. Realizing that I had been enduring my husband and Isadora's unreasonable demands and verbal abuse for this reason makes me firmly decide once again that I will divorce for my own freedom. Given the toxicity I had endured through the divorce, I had already begun preparations to claim financial compensation. Along with the divorce papers, I sent an invoice. Ever since I left the house, my phone was bombarded with calls and texts from my husband and Isadora, all of which I ignored. Unreachable and furious after reviewing the divorce papers and bills, my husband decided to take legal action against me. I got a notice from the court saying that he had filed a lawsuit against me. I was shaken for a moment, but then thought, well, it figures with those people, and began preparing my case. Thanks to Eileen's advice, I had a strong case. I presented as evidence the recordings I had made of my husband's abusive language before leaving the house, as well as photos of injuries he had inflicted on me, and medical reports that backed them up. The evidence worked in my favor, and I won the case. The court ordered him to grant the divorce and pay tens of thousands in compensation. Finally, I gained a peaceful, humane life. Afterward, Eileen told me that I was oblivious to it, because I was so emotionally dependent on my ex-husband, but the yelling from him and Isadora was heard by the neighbors. There were already rumors that I was perhaps being abused, or at least mistreated. My departure confirmed their suspicions, and the rumors spread like wildfire. I heard they're now seen as the family that tormented their wife. Isadora and Louis broke up right after. It seems they stayed together while I was there because they feared it might hurt me if they separated. Isadora was apparently devastated, clinging to Louis's feet and crying, but he firmly told her, I can't be with someone who doesn't value their son's wife and family. I can't imagine a future with someone who can't feel gratitude for the people close to them. Since I left the house, my husband was forced to take care of household chores, something he was never good at. He and Isadora seemed to be constantly arguing about dividing up the tasks. He used to relieve his work stress by taking it out on me, but with me gone, he turned to alcohol for relief. During our legal proceedings, his drinking increased significantly. When he drank, he would become violent, and he became even more aggressive, now even towards Isadora. One day, he went to work still under the influence and caused some trouble. This led to disciplinary action, and he lost his job. Now he seems to be doing tough physical labor to make ends meet. Fortunately, I had received the settlement money in a lump sum, so I wasn't affected by his downfall. After giving heartfelt thank yous to Eileen and Louis, who had helped me, I moved far away and started a new life. Even though Eileen and I now live farther apart, we continue to deepen our friendship, meeting for coffee and taking trips together. Though this was an awful experience, and I didn't gain a family, I found something equally valuable: true friendship. I've returned to nursing, feeling even more fulfilled than before as I work diligently for my patients. And I've tried starting new things that I've always been interested in, like marathons and swimming. I'm enjoying my days, free and uncontrolled by anyone, filled with fun and excitement.
My husband, Brian, is incredibly ambitious. His transition from a regional branch to the headquarters where I work appears to be fueled by a desire to climb the corporate ladder and become wealthy. This ambition made me wary of him. When we first met, Brian asked me, "Linda, your father is connected to our company, isn't he?" Yes, I work for the company where my father serves as an executive. I've been viewed differently by people inside and outside the company because I have a relative in a position of power. However, time and time again, I've proven my worth through my skills and performance. In a way, my assertive nature might be suited for this type of environment. Despite my initial suspicion, Brian, being handsome and motivated, was a breath of fresh air compared to the all-talk men at headquarters. Working with Brian was enjoyable, and he was always proactive in his approach. I found myself gradually drawn to him. Brian proposed to me, saying, "Linda, with you, I can give my all in both work and home. I believe we can make a great couple. Will you marry me?" I responded with, "Are you sure? I might get so absorbed in work that I may not be able to cherish you." We both are career-oriented, so we spend less time together at home and go out or travel less than most couples. But we trust each other and enjoy our time together. Therefore, I was happy. However, this spring, it was decided that Brian would be transferred alone to a regional branch. Brian, who enjoyed working at headquarters, was deeply disappointed, and I felt it was unfair, given that we were newlyweds. However, I've heard that this is a crucial assignment that could lead to a promotion, and he should be able to return to the headquarters in about a year. With today's technology, we can video call via computer or smartphone. Given that we spend less time together anyway, we can manage our feelings of loneliness and distance. Besides, if I really miss him, I can always go visit. With this in mind, I saw off my husband with a smile. It's been about 3 months since Brian moved to the regional office. We video call each other once or twice a week to update each other on our lives. As I imagined, the world is convenient now, and if we carefully set aside time for long video calls, we don't feel lonely. It seems like you're having fun there. I'd like to do things like visiting local attractions. Maybe I should come to visit during the summer vacation? I casually mentioned, to which Brian responded with uncertainty. "Yeah, I'd love to see you, but they're working me non-stop. I'm not even sure if I'll get any summer vacation." "Oh, I see. Leading a project must be exhausting. Take care." I trust my husband's words, and I am saddened by that. Suddenly, I started to wonder about the interior of the apartment my husband Brian was renting, which was beyond his faith. I thought that maybe he couldn't clean properly because he's so busy. But, looking at the part of the room visible on the screen, it seemed surprisingly tidy. It's impressive how he manages to keep things neat and tidy, despite being so busy. I was about to compliment him on that when I noticed an unfamiliar bag at the edge of the screen and couldn't say anything. The bag was a woman's item. Even someone like me, who was not very up-to-date with trends, could tell at a glance that it was a high-end brand. "Hey, what's that bag?" I naturally pointed out. Brian took a quick glance over his shoulder and replied a bit flusteredly. Look, it's a wedding anniversary gift. We don't get to see each other much, right? But I wanted to make sure to give you something tangible at least. How is it? It has a beautiful shape, and it comes with a matching coin purse, which will be handy, right? I thought it would suit you. I ordered it online, so I wasn't sure about the condition. That's why I unboxed it. I wanted it to be a surprise, but I guess I messed up. I'm sorry." "Ah, no, it's fine. I'm happy, and I'm looking forward to its arrival." No matter how you think about it, it's suspicious. The excuse seems plausible, but there is a sense of mistrust. But at that time, I couldn't confront him, because I still wanted to believe in Brian. Actually, the bag was indeed sent to me later, so it might have been rude to doubt him. The message card was filled with affectionate comments, and I was sincerely happy. However, despite having all this reassurance, I just couldn't erase the slight sense of distrust. I ended up not even taking the bag out of the box. and it's still in my closet. Several months have passed since then. On a day when I had gotten used to the life without Brian and to communicating via video calls, "Well, Brian, I should get going." "Ah, yeah. It's getting colder, so be careful not to catch a cold, Linda." I was about to say thank you and end the call when the doorbell at my house rang. "What's wrong?" "Ah, a courier has arrived. You can hang up the call, Brian. See you later." Saying so, I got up and headed for the entrance. At the time, the thought of quickly receiving the package dominated my mind, so I couldn't even consider that I hadn't hung up the call, or that the screen was left on. When I got the package and went back to my room, my husband's face was still on the computer screen. I guess this is the end of the call." For some reason, Brian seemed to think that his side of the remote connection had been cut off, even though his image was still being displayed on my side. I was about to call out to him when an unbelievable sight appeared on the screen, and I instinctively covered my mouth with my hand. There was a bed on the other side of the desk where Brian's computer was, and an unknown woman was sitting on it. Despite being broad daylight, she was in a bathrobe. What's more, I noticed that the exact same bag I'd said was a present for a recent anniversary was lying under the bed. Memories of a suspicion I had almost forgotten began to resurface in my mind. Brian had indeed brought a woman into his apartment, and it wasn't just once or twice. The woman was casually playing with her smartphone on the bed, appearing completely accustomed to being in Brian's room. "Oh, you seem to be having so much fun chatting with your wife," the woman said with a cackle, as if to mock me, who was not present. "That might be true, but she's not here now," Brian replied, grinning without realizing that I was listening. "You're such a jerk. The real jerk is you, leaving your bag out in plain sight. I had to buy the same bag just to camouflage it. It was expensive, you know." "That's your own fault." "It's a shame that a luxury item like that is wasted on her. She has no sense of fashion." As they continued their playful banter, Brian and the woman lay down on the bed. I couldn't bear to watch any longer, so I shut down the computer. If I had to put my feelings into words, I would say I just felt regret. It seemed he had gifted me the bag as an anniversary present, but was it actually given to cover up his infidelity? "Brian, you're really the worst," I muttered, the insult slipping out before I could stop it. It's not something I really wanted to say. And that girl is... I also felt something familiar about the woman he was cheating with. I'm sure she's the daughter of the executive vice president who joined the company this year. The audacity to bring her all the way out to the country for a secret rendezvous? It seems like quite an elaborate affair. But somehow, it makes sense to me. I can't help but chuckle, thinking it's a typical choice for an ambitious man like Brian. After all, I too am the daughter of a high-ranking executive. It's just like Brian to pick a mistress who could prove useful in some way. Now, I can't believe in anything anymore. I thought he loved me, as a person. Just when I got tired of feeling angry, I started feeling like I couldn't forgive him now. So I decided to check the truth, and took action. A few days after that shocking video call, Brian suggested we spend some leisure time together. Perhaps he thought it would look bad if we didn't pretend to be friendly from time to time. I responded with an eager yes to his suggestion. Holding the purse that Brian had given me, I visited the apartment he had rented. "See, I keep it pretty clean, don't I? I'll go get us some iced tea." Watching Brian's back as he headed towards the kitchen, I saw my opportunity and took action. I quietly placed the coin purse that matched my bag inside the cupboard of Brian's computer desk. Unbeknownst to Brian, the coin purse contained a bug. It was a high-end model with excellent battery life, so it should continue to capture sounds for several days. Without any evidence, I wouldn't be able to complain. I assumed Brian would notice it, of course, but his mistress has the same one, too. would he be able to distinguish who owns which? If he does distinguish them, I'll just have to find another way. If he doesn't, that's a win for me. I'm excited to see what kind of information I can gather. When the battery is about to die, I'll call Brian to confirm. I seem to have lost the coin purse you gave me. Do you have it over there by any chance? Oh, yeah. It was wedged in the drawer of my desk. You're so clumsy. I guess Brian found the coin purse, but didn't open it. I could guess from his casual response. If I ask him to send it back because I need it right away, the coin purse will be back in my hands within a few days. Then, as I nervously played the audio, there it was, clear as day. My husband Brian and the daughter of the executive having an illicit affair, their voices engaged in an intimate conversation. Based on this data, I hired a private investigator and had him look into this. As he dug deeper, it turned out that Brian was involved with many more women, not just the executive's daughter. There were so many, I couldn't even count them all on one hand, and they included daughters of board members and department heads. As for me, I began to uncover aspects of Brian that I never knew before, as I started listening to his colleagues in his department. Apparently, Brian had been struggling with his performance recently and seemed to be quite stressed. Realizing that his efforts alone were no longer sufficient to achieve results, he must have shifted his focus from work to networking. I feel genuinely sorry for him. Failing to perform can be a hard pill to swallow. However, that has nothing to do with him betraying me and having affairs with other women. Moreover, he seems to be plotting to use these women as stepping stones to further his career. It's a despicable behavior, both as a man and as a professional. As I continued to investigate on my own, I felt my feelings for Brian quickly cooling off, and a feeling of vengeance began to sprout within me, for he had wounded my pride. Brian's work assignment away from home ended sooner than expected, before even a year was up. He returned home. To celebrate his return, I invited both of our parents and threw a home party. With a feast delivered to our door, lively music playing, and just family around, the atmosphere of our small party was quite jovial. Wait, the music's vibe has changed. And is that my voice? The speakers synced to the music player started blasting Brian's conversation with the executive's daughter throughout the house. Brian turned pale, confused, and flustered. What's this, Linda? I had already explained the situation to my parents. However, Brian's parents were in a state of panic, hearing their son's voice entangled with a woman they didn't recognize, and started to confront him. Brian, what's the meaning of this? Surely you're not cheating on Linda. By playing the audio recordings of Brian's conversations with the other woman, which I obtained with the help of the investigator, Brian finally realized that I knew about his affairs. Linda, you knew everything, didn't you? Trembling, Brian turned to me with a question. With a smile, I responded, Why not consider marrying the CEO's daughter next? That'll land you the CEO position in a snap. Though, considering that I've spread these recordings to all the other women you've been involved with, I'm not sure you'll be able to handle the job, even if you become CEO. At that, Brian clung to me, his face a picture of despair. You also prefer a successful man on the fast-track promotion, right? It was a necessary step for my career. Please overlook it. But what about us? Is our marriage also just a step towards your success? No, that's not it at all, he quickly replied. You are special. Despite his words, Brian seemed flustered. When he was at a loss for words, my father stepped in and addressed him. Brian, did you approach my daughter to take advantage of my position? Tell us the truth. In response to my father's earnest question, Brian confessed. Initially, it was about getting ahead. Even though other women were merely tools for my advancement, I am truly serious about Linda. I promise I won't cheat again. Please forgive me this time. I want a chance to make it right. It was hard to judge whether he was lying or telling the truth. Yet, after such blatant infidelity, even when he claims that I'm the only special one, I find it hard to trust him. It's not my place to decide, my father continued. It's up to Linda. I can't even tell if you really mean what you're saying, but I can tell you this much. I despise you, and I can't accept you as my son-in-law. Even Brian's parents seemed doubtful of their son's honesty. Brian, we want to believe in you, but we know that you've always had a strong desire to overcome your small-town upbringing and make it big in the city. That's why, even with all the evidence piled up against you, we find it hard to believe that Linda is truly special to you. Frankly, we regret the way we raised you. Even you guys? While my father's words certainly had an impact, it seemed that the disbelief of his own parents hurt Brian the most. Regardless of what others said, the decision to trust Brian or not was ultimately up to me. I decided to be honest about my feelings. I cannot trust a man who has repeatedly lied to me, deceived me, and even ridiculed me with another woman. I love my work, and I appreciate professional success. But that's why I always want to achieve success on my own. I would never stoop so low as to use someone else for my gain. But I'm telling you that you're different. Why are you abandoning me? We're married, aren't we? If you really considered us to be married, if you truly cherished me, why would you give me the same handbag that you gave to the woman you're having an affair with? And on our anniversary, of all times. Stop making a fool of me. I don't want to share a family with a lazy man who depends on others to get ahead. I want a divorce. With those words, it seemed Brian had given up. His shoulders drooped, and he began to sniffle out of frustration. Well, he had just lost his most convenient stepping stone for his career, so it served him right. Exhausted, Brian was taken home by his parents. It was unlikely he would ever return to our home. Following through on my words, I divorced Brian. After I exposed Brian's wrongdoings to all the women involved, he was sued, not only by me, but also by all the women he had affairs with. Brian couldn't possibly pay all the settlement money with the money he had. He was forced to sell all his properties and even had to take on debt. Brian will probably lose his freedom for a while, paying back his debt. He voluntarily resigned from his company, but in reality, he was practically fired. Once the rumor of his actions reached the higher-ups, it was inevitable they would be furious. With rumors spreading around the office, he probably felt uncomfortable as well. Currently, he's working in a small factory he managed to find employment at, diligently paying back his debt. His parents told me about his situation when they came to apologize. As for me, I have no intentions of ever meeting him again. Of course, I received the alimony from Brian. As for the handbag, which was the same as his mistress's, I was surprised when I sold it for almost the same price as the new one, because it was barely used. It felt like a little bonus. After separating from Brian, I began to contemplate what marriage really meant, and what's important in life. What's most important to me might still be my work, just like before. However, it's not like I don't have dreams of having a family. I might use the money from selling the bag to pamper myself a bit, preparing for a new romance, as I had to work today.
I was always a low-key person, but I decided to go all out with my makeup for my high school reunion. Turns out, no one even remembered me.
Excuse me, who are you?
The voice belonged to Jennifer, who had been doing amateur modeling since high school.
Wow, you're so caked up. I can't even recognize you.
Unbelievably, Jennifer splashed her cup of water on my face. With my makeup gone, I suddenly felt vulnerable, as if a spell had been broken. Just then, I heard murmurs from my classmates.
Wait, are you?
Yes, I'm not the same person I used to be. My name is Sarah, a 20-year-old studying literature at a private university. While many college girls are into fashion, I've never been interested. I'm still that low-key person. People say you get into fashion in college, but that's never been me. Even in college, I look the same as I did in high school. I only tuck my hair behind my ears when eating. Otherwise, my face is mostly hidden, and that's fine by me. Being inconspicuous, almost like air, suits me just fine. I've loved reading since I was a kid. In elementary school, while everyone else ran to the playground, I headed to the library. I can't remember if I loved books first or if I went to the library to fill a lonely void, but I definitely love reading. Inside books, there's a world that I don't know about. Books add color to my otherwise monotonous life. Reading was my only hobby, especially since I wasn't good at sports or socializing. In high school, reading wasn't enough, so I started writing novels. I would hide behind my long hair and secretly observe people for story ideas. In my world, exciting things are always happening, things I'll never experience. Just like reading books, observing the real world was fascinating.
Sarah, tuck your hair behind your ears. No one can talk to you if they can't see your face. Well, I guess I'm the only one who would.
Jennifer, who was way out of my league, would occasionally come over to my desk to talk. She was an amateur model, known as the rich high schooler. I never understood why Jennifer picked on me. But she wasn't bullying me, just teasing. She was indeed pretty and wore high-end brands. But she never became material for my novels, so I ignored her. My hobby of writing novels, which started in high school, continues to this day, and I even post my works online. One day after college, I dashed off to a publishing house in Boston. The scenery from this unusual train ride seemed more vivid than usual. Oh man, I'm so nervous. For the past week, my heart has been racing, and it's all I can do to keep my composure. My heart is pounding, and it's reaching its peak now. Next, please. Nice to meet you. I've been a fan of Miss Williams since middle school. I poured my feelings into those words, probably speaking more openly than I ever had before. By the way, Miss Williams is the author Emily Williams, whom I adore. Today, her new book launch event is happening at this publishing house. You have a way with words, dear. Thank you for loving my work so much. Keep challenging yourself to broaden your horizons, Miss Williams said, signing her new book for me. As I walked away, still on cloud 9, a man near the entrance of the publishing house stopped me. Little did I know that this encounter would change my life. He gave me a special makeup set, and strangely enough, it sparked an interest in makeup, something I had never cared about. From then on, I started waking up a little earlier to do my makeup before going to college. It's strange. When I put on makeup, my face naturally lifts, and my perspective broadens. I realized that the world, which I thought was always the same, actually changes from moment to moment. Makeup isn't just about looking good. It's more than that. One day, as I was feeling this newfound joy and curiosity, I found an invitation to my high school reunion in the mail. Ah, a reunion, huh? The old me would have sighed and debated whether to go. But now,
I feel a slight urge to attend. Encouraged by Miss Williams' words to keep challenging yourself, I decided to go to the reunion. On the day, I opened the makeup set and saw various eyeshadows, lipsticks, and blushes I had never used. Should I go a bit more glamorous for the reunion? I chose some bold colors I usually wouldn't use. Before I knew it, I had applied heavy makeup like a stage actress. Well, no one will remember my face anyway, I thought, and headed to the reunion in a new dress I bought for the occasion. Technically, you need my agency's permission to take a photo with me, but I'll let it slide today. When I arrived, Jennifer was already the center of attention, tipsy and more flamboyant than ever. She had transitioned from amateur modeling to professional appearing in magazines, which I had seen a year ago. Impressive indeed. While I didn't necessarily want to be like Jennifer, I admired her for her boldly expressing herself. As for me, people who passed by barely nodded, clearly not remembering me. I guess that's to be expected. Why would they remember someone they never spoke to? Even though it was a predictable reaction, I felt a bit sad. Excuse me, who are you? Just then, Jennifer, who had noticed me standing at the entrance, came over with a cup of water. She looked closely at my face, chuckled, and then the next moment, something cold splashed on my face. Hey, what are you doing? In a flash, I didn't know what had happened, but Jennifer splashed water from her cup onto my face. The room fell silent. I can't even recognize you with all that overdone makeup. Jennifer's voice echoed through the room. Unfazed by the reactions around her, she showed me the empty cup and laughed. What just happened? So cold. What does my face look like now? I wiped my face with a handkerchief, only to find it smeared with makeup. So my makeup is ruined. Suddenly I felt vulnerable, as if a spell had been broken. Then voices from my classmates.
Hey, haven't we seen her on TV?
Wait, are you related to Tommy Haywood? Before I knew it, a crowd had gathered around me. Jennifer was even more surprised and lost for words. You see, I had recently made my TV debut. On my way back from Miss Williams' new book launch, a man approached me. It was Tommy Haywood, a world-renowned makeup artist. He had been in another room at the publishers doing an interview. In today's world, beauty interests both men and women, and Tommy Haywood's show boasts top ratings in the beauty genre. Even I, who knew little about beauty and makeup, had heard of him. When Tommy Haywood approached me near the entrance after the event, I was shocked.
I'm borrowing her.
With that, he grabbed my arm and led me to an empty conference room, not minding my surprise.
Don't worry. I'll give you a makeover.
Tommy Haywood sat me down, removed his glasses, and did my makeup in just a few minutes. Finally, he fixed my hair.
Take a look.
I was amazed when I looked into the hand mirror he handed me. Wow, I look beautiful. Even the people from the publishing house were surprised by my transformation.
How about becoming my exclusive model?
What? Exclusive model? I instinctively shook my head at the unfamiliar proposition.
Why not? Meeting you here today is fate. I'm so proud of how beautiful you've become with my makeup. Let's inspire women around the world together.
I was indeed grateful for the incredible makeover, and happy to have met someone so famous. But I don't want to stand out. I've lived my life avoiding attention, and I'm comfortable that way. Hearing my words, Tommy Haywood slowly shook his head.
You should believe in your potential, and have the courage to step into the wider world. Think about it.
With that, Tommy Haywood gifted me his contact information and a custom makeup set. That's the makeup set I'm using now. For days after, Tommy Haywood's words stuck in my mind. Not just him. Ms. Williams had said something similar. Broaden your horizons. Take on new challenges. Let's give it a try. I made up my mind and called Tommy Haywood. From then on, I left everything to him. One thing led to another, and I became a regular model on Tommy Haywood's show. On the show, I revealed my bare face and underwent an incredible transformation thanks to his magic touch. It seems someone here had seen that episode.
Oh, it's Sarah.
Sarah, you're Tommy Haywood's exclusive model. That's amazing.
Tell us the story.
My classmates started talking to me one after another. I have a better modeling career than you. Just then, Jennifer's voice, full of resentment, echoed through the room. She was glaring at us from outside the circle of people. My classmates, who had seen Jennifer splash water on me, looked at her with disdain. You should thank me. I'm the one who removed your overdone makeup so people could recognize you. She showed no signs of remorse. That's when Robert, the class heartthrob, stepped in front of Jennifer, showing her his phone.
Jennifer, you're so boring. Most of your Instagram photos are stock images, aren't they?
What are you talking about, Robert? That's not true.
Well, the American store you posted about recently has been under renovation for months. And someone saw you in Boston just a few hours before you claimed to be in Paris.
Robert continued to press a flustered Jennifer.
You're not actually getting any modeling gigs, are you?
That's mean. Jennifer, visibly shaken, couldn't bear the cold stares from her classmates and stormed out of the room.
Lies catch up to you, don't they?
One classmate muttered. I later heard that many classmates had been following Jennifer's Instagram and were growing tired of her fake posts.
Sarah, you dropped this earlier.
Robert handed me Ms. Williams' book, which had fallen out of my bag when Jennifer splashed water on me. Thank you. After that, I talked more with classmates than I had in all 3 years of high school. Talking to people around me wasn't as hard as I thought. Everyone has their own thoughts, their own way of living, and their own uncertainties. I knew this, of course, but hearing it directly from people felt different than reading it in a book. I'm glad I attended the reunion. I'm truly glad I mustered the courage back then. As for Jennifer, I heard she got fired from her modeling agency. Someone had posted a video of her splashing water on me at the reunion, and it went viral, causing a backlash. Social media can be scary. While I question the person who posted the video, I hope Jennifer learns to live without lying to herself. 3 years have passed since then.
Is this Sarah? Could you come over now?
The call led me back to the publishing house where I had first met Tommy Haywood and talked to Ms. Williams 3 years ago. That day, in this place, my life changed dramatically. As I was lost in thought, a voice came from behind me.
Are you Miss Sarah, the writer?
Writer? Me?
Yes. Your novel is going to be published. You're making your debut as a novelist.
Really? I was so surprised that I kept asking for confirmation. Ever since gaining confidence, I had been sending my own novels to the publishing house. One of them caught the attention of the higher-ups, and now it's going to be a book.
From now on, you'll be a beauty expert and a writer. You'll be busy. We'll schedule a meeting for next week. Looking forward to working with you, Miss Sarah.
Likewise, thank you. Being called a writer still tickles me a bit. Will I ever get used to it? No, never forget where you started. As I stepped outside, the warm glow of the sunset enveloped me. The building housing the publishing company was also bathed in the colors of the setting sun. This place is indeed special to me. I'm glad I took that courageous step back then. Otherwise, I might still be hiding behind my hair, living in a limited world. I wouldn't have been able to see this beautiful view, or be a part of the exciting things happening around me. Of course, books are still my dear friends. But now, I want to write books that give hope to those who lack courage, just like I did. Facing the setting sun, I made that resolution. Good morning.
Good morning. I hope we find a great venue today.
Yeah. Today, I'm going venue hunting for our wedding with the man who recently proposed to me. That man is Robert, whom I reconnected with at the reunion 3 years ago. Robert, who picked up the book I had dropped. We've been in touch since then and found out we both love reading, especially Ms. Williams' books. Robert, the class heartthrob, turned out to be someone I could relate to. Being with him makes my heart race. The world around me shines, and I feel at ease. New emotions are stirring within me.
Found another idea for a novel, haven't you?
Robert peered into my face. You noticed?
Come on, let's go. No work talk today. Our wedding is our own special story. Don't turn it into a novel.
Oh, come on. Let's share our happiness. Our voices echoed in the air. Hand in hand, Robert and I stepped into the pristine wedding venue.
In a world, there are stories of wicked mothers-in-law and sisters-in-law who torment their daughters-in-law. But the opposite can happen too. Listen to our story of how a strong-willed daughter-in-law broke our family and how we rebuilt it. My name is Freya. I'm 25 years old. Just the other day, I married Knox, who is 3 years older than me at work, and I am on top of the world. When I left the house I had lived in for many years, my grandmother said, "I'll be lonely here too, but Freya, live happily. If anything happens, you can always come back." She sent me off with those words. My parents divorced when I was in 8th grade and my brother Elliot was in 12th grade. We weren't at an age where we absolutely needed a mother, and since Elliot and I were both preparing for exams and for financial reasons, we children lived with our father. Our grandmother, my father's mother, took care of us preparing meals and cleaning. The reason for the divorce was my father's infidelity. My grandmother often said, "I really feel sorry for your mother. My son isn't a bad person, but he's always had a weakness for women. Or rather, he's too timid to refuse an invitation." He was a kind and good father to us siblings, but marital relationships and relationships between men and women are different matters. My grandmother was a gentle and hard-working person. I have never seen her take a break. Whenever she had a free moment, she would start cleaning or knitting, her hobby. Elliot and I received many sweaters and scarves knitted by her. Even though they were divorced, we often met with our mother for meals or shopping, so we didn't feel particularly lonely. I think my mother really loved my father. Even after they separated, she often worried about him. That's probably why she couldn't forgive his infidelity. I remember my mother crying throughout the funeral when my father suddenly died of a stroke 6 years ago. When my father died, my mother had already remarried, so living with her was not an option for us siblings. We couldn't leave our grandmother alone in this big house, and Elliot agreed. Our mother said she would help us in any way if something happened. Then I got married and moved out, leaving my grandmother and Elliot alone in the old, too large house. It's only a 15-minute drive from our new home, so I'll visit often. I want to get grandma's cooking. I really thought so and intended to do so, but a year after I moved out, Elliot got married. That was the beginning of everything. Elliot, 29, had impregnated a woman 4 years older. I was surprised by the words of Diana, who would become my sister-in-law when we first met. "I am having a child, so I made him take responsibility and marry me. I really didn't want to get married." I think the responsibility lies with both adults. If you don't want to get married, then use contraception.
I thought to myself, but didn't say it out loud. To be honest, my impression of Diana was quite bad. She has a beautiful face, but I think her bad personality shows on her face. Despite saying she didn't want to get married, both the wedding and reception were quite lavish. I think Elliot must have struggled a lot. There must have been financial help from my grandmother. Elliot, perhaps, like our father, is kind-hearted but weak-willed. It was clear that he was already under the thumb of his older wife. The first time I visited my grandmother's house after Elliot's wedding, Diana said to me, "You're married now, right? You shouldn't be coming back here so often. Be careful." Such an arrogant attitude right off the bat. I was annoyed to comply with Diana's wishes, but naturally my visit to my grandmother's house became less frequent. I did rush to congratulate them when the baby was born, but I couldn't help but worry about my grandmother's condition. She had lost a lot of weight. "Grandma, are you okay? You have lost some weight, haven't you? Are you feeling ill?" When I asked, my grandmother laughed and said, "I'm fine. At my age, being heavy is hard on the knees, so losing a little weight is just right." She says she's not feeling bad, but my grandmother will be 77 next month. As a granddaughter who adores her, I can't help but worry. "Grandma, your birthday is next month. We have to celebrate." When I said that, she replied, No, it's fine. My great-grandchild was just born, so I'm not in the mood for that." Always so modest. "Why don't we celebrate the baby and your birthday together?" I thought it was a great idea, but my grandmother firmly declined. "Really? Don't worry about me. Just celebrate the baby." I tried to talk to Elliot and Diana directly, but Diana shot me down. "It's bad luck to celebrate an old person with little time left and a newborn baby together. Besides, she said she doesn't need it, right? There's no need to force it." What's with her? Taking advantage of Grandma's kindness and saying whatever she wants? Saying little time left outright? I was furious and vented my anger to Knox. "Come on, Freya, I understand why you're angry, but if Grandma asks for help, we can be there for her. I'll help too when that time comes." Knox's words were comforting, but I have never seen my grandmother complain or show weakness. That's why I am worried. The following year, I became pregnant. I tried to talk to Elliot and Diana directly, but Diana dismissed me again. "Giving birth is really hard. It's very painful and agonizing. Are you sure you'll be okay, Freya?" Talking down to me about something every woman knows, it was incredibly irritating. I was also concerned that Elliot's child, who was almost 2, was clinging to my grandmother. Even when Diana called, the child hid behind my grandmother and wouldn't go to its mother. "Oh dear, how unlovable. She's completely tamed her great-grandchild," Diana said, looking displeased. What an awful thing to say. I know from Elliot that Diana returned to full-time work 2 months after giving birth. During those 2 months of maternity leave, she apparently dumped most of the housework and childcare on my grandmother. Elliot told her many times not to leave the child rearing to our grandmother, but she wouldn't listen. Isn't the reason the child doesn't come to you because you have left all the childcare to grandma? Of course, the child will become attached to the person who's always there and takes care of them. When I said that, Diana replied, "You know, I never wanted children or even to get married. I have no intention of quitting my job, and I'm needed at my company. You might not understand that." Diana's way of speaking really gets under my skin every time. I'm sure she's under a witch's curse. If she accidentally utters a kind word, the curse will make her face swell to twice its size. That's the only way I can make sense of her. On my way home, I was called over by Rosie from my house across the street. Rosie and I have known each other since I was a child. She's a bit of a gossip, but a good-natured and friendly person. During a neighborhood chat, Rosie and her friends asked Diana, who was returning from work, "You're already back at work after just having a baby? Are you feeling okay?" Diana replied that her daughter had been taken by her grandmother and she was being forced to work. Of course, I completely denied that, and Rosie, who has known my grandmother even longer than I have, didn't believe Diana's words either. She probably called me over because she was worried, not believing Diana. If we leave Diana alone, there's no telling what lies she will spread about the neighborhood. I was thinking that I needed to have a serious talk with Elliot about Diana when all of a sudden, my grandmother collapsed. She fell while pulling weeds in the garden and was taken away in an ambulance. It happened during a break in the June rainy season. The lady across the street called the ambulance. Diana couldn't be reached and Elliot was stuck in a meeting, so they contacted me. Fortunately, it was just mild heat stroke. My grandmother had regained consciousness by the time I arrived. "Grandma, are you okay?" I called out, and my grandmother, more concerned about her great-granddaughter, said, "Oh, Freya, what about the baby? She should be napping in the room visible from the garden. It would be pitiful if she woke up alone." Apparently, my grandmother had been pulling weeds while checking on her great-granddaughter's nap. "You should have let Elliot do the weeding. You shouldn't overdo it, Grandma." "Never mind that. Hurry home and check on her. If she's awake and crying, give her the rabbit stuffed animal. That usually stops her crying." She urged me on. My grandmother was kept in the hospital for a day to be safe given her age. I rushed to my grandmother's house and found my niece still sound asleep in the room facing the garden. When I returned to the hospital with my niece, my grandmother was asleep. My niece, who seemed a little frightened by the hospital atmosphere, trotted over to my grandmother and asked, "Nana, Nana, are you okay? Does your tummy hurt?" My grandmother woke up and stroked her head. "Oh, good. Nana is fine. Freya, I'm so sorry to bother you, especially with a baby in your belly." Even at this time, my grandmother was worried about my niece and me. "Hey, Grandma, the lady across the street told me that Diana is telling people in the neighborhood that she has been forced to work and that you have taken her daughter. Aren't you upset being bossed around by someone like that and even lied about? I'm furious. It makes me so angry." I was trying to keep my voice down because we were in a hospital room, but tears started to flow and I couldn't stop them. My grandmother silently stroked my head. "Yes, I want to leave that house." Then she whispered. It was the first time I had ever heard my grandmother's voice of weakness. "Exactly, Grandma. You don't have to work for someone like Diana. Let's live together at my place." I truly felt that way, but my grandmother said, "Thank you, Freya, but I can't. What would happen to this child if I were gone?" She said this while stroking the head of her great-granddaughter who was standing beside the bed looking puzzled. "They'll figure it out. They are her parents after all." Just then Elliot, the child's father, arrived after leaving work early. "Grandma, are you okay? I told you I would do the weeding on my next day off." From what Elliot said, it seemed that Diana had ordered my grandmother to do the weeding. How far is she willing to exploit our grandmother? I know it's pointless to say anything, but I couldn't keep quiet. According to Elliot, he never thought she was so selfish when they were dating. I have heard of husbands changing after marriage, but it seems wives can change too. I always thought that a husband would become more arrogant over the years. But there are people like Diana. What Elliot told me was beyond my imagination. My grandmother was treated like Diana's slave. Elliot tried to warn and scold her, but she didn't care, and all Elliot could do was help his grandmother. It's shameful for Elliot, but he's always been a kind person, like his grandmother and father. I never want my grandmother to go back to that house. The dream I had that night was the worst. My grandmother, Elliot, and I were desperately rowing oars under a violently rocking ship. If we rested our hands, a whip would come flying. Diana was the one wielding the whip. When my grandmother is discharged tomorrow, I told Elliot she should come to my place for emergency shelter. It's the weekend and both Elliot and Diana are off work. They'll be fine without grandmother. I want her to rest and think about the future. Elliot seemed resolved, saying, "I love my daughter, but I think this marriage was a mistake. I'll take responsibility." He said that and left with his daughter. When my discharged grandmother stepped into my small 2DK apartment, she laughed and said, "Oh my, it's quite cozy. Cleaning will be easy." She had lived in that big old house for many years. It's not surprising she felt that way. When I moved out of that house and started living here, I was shocked by the smallness too. Thanks to that, I was teased as the young lady by Knox for a while. No matter how much I told my grandmother to rest, she kept working, cleaning the water areas and cooking for my husband. While relaxing with after-dinner coffee, Elliot called. His daughter was throwing a tantrum and wouldn't take a shower. She always wants her grandma to bathe her. She says she won't go in without Bertie. What's Bertie? He said, but I couldn't stand being bothered with such things. What's her mother doing? When I asked, I was surprised to hear that she had gone on an overnight trip with friends since morning. My grandmother guessed from the conversation that Bertie was a duck toy and it was on the shelf in the dressing room. Traveling when the grandmother had collapsed? Leaving a young daughter to travel even if it was pre-booked, I understood that Deanna was completely unreliable in childcare. Elliot, I'm coming over tomorrow. I can't stand it anymore. She's the worst as both a mother and a wife. Elliot, you need to get it together too. When I said that, Elliot seemed to have made up his mind. Okay, I think she'll be back after 7 in the evening. He said that and hung up. That's a relief. Bertie must be relieved too. I called my mother. I had reported about Deanna a few times, but my mother never thought it would be this bad. Elliot is just like his father. He can't take a strong stance against women, my mother said with a sigh, promising to support us fully. The next day, when Deanna returned from her trip, she was met by Elliot, me, his sister-in-law, our grandmother, and not just us, but also Knox, our mother, and her new husband. A total of 6 people. Our niece was put to bed by our grandmother. Oh, what? Why are there so many people? Why are there people I don't know? Who are you? Deanna said to my mother and her new husband. They are Elliot's and my mother? The man next to her is her new husband? When I said that, she replied, oh, the one who left this house and her child? Why are you here now and what do you want? With that one sentence, I think Deanna completely turned my mother against her. I called them? My mother's husband is a lawyer. Deanna looked a little startled when she heard the word lawyer from me. Elliot promptly said, divorce me. I can't go on with you. He said it firmly. What? What are you talking about all of a sudden? What did I do? Deanna screamed. Well, you did. You exploited our dear grandmother. You left your daughter and went on a trip when grandma collapsed. You dumped almost all the housework on her. You left childcare to her too. I said to Deanna very calmly, listing the points. But I'm working, aren't I? Isn't it normal for the family to help? But you're not putting your income into the household, are you? You are using it for trips like this one and for your clothes and cosmetics, right? I was speechless when I heard this from Elliot. Why do I have to be told that by you? I never wanted to get married or have children in the first place. Elliot got me pregnant and I had to marry him and have the child. She acted as if she was the victim and not at fault at all. That's when Elliot spoke. I didn't want to talk about this in front of everyone, but you said it was a safe date, didn't you? I didn't really want to hear such a raw story from Elliot, but it seemed Deanna had planned the pregnancy. And you said on the phone with your friend, at this age, people around me are nagging, so I thought it would be good to get married and have at least one child. It's a detached house with a garden. He's the eldest son, no mother-in-law, and the sister-in-law is married off. Quite a good property. Usually quiet Elliot said all this at once. Deanna turned bright red and yelled, What? You were eavesdropping? It's not eavesdropping when you were talking loudly. Grandma heard it too. You don't care about me or Grandma. Only about yourself, so it doesn't matter who hears it, right? Even when Elliot said that, Deanna didn't seem to back down. There is no evidence of that. It's impossible for you to unilaterally divorce me. Besides, I'm the mother. You can't separate me from my child. What nerve she has playing the mother card now after leaving childcare entirely to our grandmother? We have evidence, I said, pulling out my mobile phone. It contained videos forwarded from Elliot, showing Deanna's daily comments and how she treated our grandmother like a slave. Elliot might be timid, but he must have been trembling with anger inside. When he started thinking about divorce, he thought something might be used as evidence, so he recorded audio and video. With this much evidence, you won't get custody. If you don't agree to the divorce, there's the option of mediation, but you have no chance of winning. Don't forget, we have a lawyer on our side, I said, glancing at my mother's husband, who nodded deeply in silence. Elliot then promptly spread the filled-out divorce papers on the table. The video showed Deanna lounging on the sofa watching TV and our grandmother diligently taking care of her great-granddaughter changing her clothes. "What is this? What's going on? Don't mess with me." Diana, her face bright red, scribbled and signed the divorce papers, then grabbed her belongings in her room, saying, "I am glad to leave this big, shabby house. I'll come back for my stuff later. Don't you dare dispose of it," and left with those parting words. After Diana left, the room was as quiet as if a storm had passed. "Thank you all. I will make some coffee now." Everyone came to their senses at our grandmother's words. "Grandma, I'll do it. Just sit down," I said, going to the kitchen to boil water. "I haven't been in this kitchen for a while," my mother said, helping me with the cookies. "Mom, thank you for bringing your husband. Having a lawyer with us was very reassuring," I said, and she replied, "Yes, I'm glad I brought him. That daughter-in-law is quite a handful. I may be the bad mother who left this place, but I want you, Elliot, and Grandma to be happy. Really." My mother smiled. As we all sipped coffee and nibbled cookies, our grandmother made a significant announcement. "I'm thinking of rebuilding this house. Then maybe Freya and her family will live here." When I left home to get married, my grandmother told me I could always come back. I thought it was a bad omen, but it came true in a different way, a happy way. About a year later, a splendid two-family house was completed. It's a slightly unconventional two-family setup with the first floor completely barrier-free for our grandmother, Elliot, and our niece. The second floor is for my husband, our newly born child, and me. By the way, we had a boy. There's a mini kitchen on the second floor separate from the main kitchen so we can cook simple meals there. There's also a sunroom that feels open even in rainy weather so the children can play without trouble. There are enough rooms for more children in the future, and even if Elliot remarries, we can live comfortably. As a side note, our son was born easily. I wish I could tell Diana, who was boasting about her childbirth. Our grandmother paid for the entire cost of rebuilding. The heads of the household are Elliot and Knox. "I wonder if I'm lucky enough to live in such a splendid house and to be the head of the household." Knox initially felt hesitant, but now he's completely settled in, living happily with his grandmother, Elliot, and his niece. Speaking of Diana, who is divorced, her parents' home is a two-bedroom apartment, and they have no room to accommodate their returned daughter, let alone space to store her vast collection of clothes, shoes, and bags. Diana seems to have no choice but to live in a cheap one-bedroom apartment. Although divorced, she still has the right to visit her daughter. Despite not trying to see her daughter for over 6 months, Diana, having somehow learned about the house renovation, seems to have pressured Elliot for a reconciliation. She's truly a self-centered and shameless person. Of course, Elliot coldly rejected her. I never knew that Grandma was so wealthy. If Diana had known that, her attitude towards our grandmother would have been different, and she would never have agreed to the divorce. My father and late grandfather left it to me. I was thinking of giving it to you while I was alive, but after that daughter-in-law came, I decided to keep the money a secret. The thought that the house and money might have become Diana's sent chills down their spines. I want you and Elliot to be happy. Grandmother had seen through Diana's true nature even while being treated so poorly. But rebuilding the house was my selfish desire. I wanted to spend my remaining years peacefully with my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Grandmother said, looking a bit apologetic. "Stop it, Grandma. They say life lasts 100 years now. You have to stay healthy until the great-grandchildren get married." When I said that, Grandma replied, "That sounds delightful," and smiled gently. Seeing her like that, I want her to live surrounded by grandchildren and great-grandchildren peacefully and happily. People like Diana who only think of themselves and can't care for others will live as they please and leave this world alone. It's too late to regret when you're old and have no one around. One day, while thinking about this, I heard the news of a company's bankruptcy. It sounded familiar, and it turned out to be Diana's workplace. The first misfortune came sooner than expected. I don't know if Diana will actually lose her job, but surely a life like a rolling stone awaits her. Elliot seems to have a new girlfriend lately. Elliot, don't repeat the same mistake, okay? When I warned him, Elliot retorted, "I know, one strong-willed woman like Freya is enough." And everyone laughed. The children, my son and niece, laughed without understanding the meaning. When the adults are smiling, the children smile too.
Mom, look at this funny balloon I found.
A delighted 4-year-old daughter walks into the living room, her voice bubbling with excitement. The moment I see what she's holding, I almost scream. It's unmistakably something meant for adults. Where on earth did you find that? Ignoring my panicked reaction, my daughter responds,
It was in Dad's bag.
She then starts blowing air into the elongated object to play with it. My father-in-law, who's also in the living room, looks frozen, unsure of what to do. I'll buy you one in a prettier color, sweetie. Please give that one to Mommy. With a forced smile, I take the item from my daughter's hands. Later, when my daughter is not around, my father-in-law and I check my husband's luggage from his business trip and discover something even more shocking. Please stay tuned for the disturbing truth revealed by my daughter's innocent actions, my subsequent revenge, and the fate of the betrayer. My name is Marcia. I'm 33 years old and married. My husband Morris and I were classmates in veterinary school. Before graduating, we both obtained our veterinary licenses, deepening our relationship as a couple of veterinarians. After 5 years of dating, we got married and began working at Morris's family veterinary clinic, leading us to live with my father-in-law, Andreas. Andreas is not only a wonderful veterinarian, but also a great person. He adores our daughter, Alicia, who was born in our 2nd year of marriage. Thanks to him, living together has been stress-free, and I've come to think of Andreas as a real father. Our family consists of me, my husband Morris, our daughter Alicia, and our pet toy poodle, Earl. We were a harmonious family of 4 humans and 1 pet living peacefully. But at some point, things began to cast a shadow over our lives. Morris started acting strangely. He began spending more time away from home, citing conferences and study sessions, and became glued to his cell phone. His attitude toward me also grew colder. On an unforgettable day, my birthday, Morris said he'd be late because of a study session. In his place, Andreas bought a cake, and Alicia and I celebrated as a trio.
Happy birthday, Mommy!
4-year-old Alicia claps her hands, smiling at me. Happy birthday, Marcia. Go ahead, blow out the candles. Though Morris's absence felt lonely, I was happy to have 2 people celebrating with me, and I blew out the candles on the cake. I remember even Earl seemed to pick up on the festive mood, hopping around joyfully. After putting Alicia to bed, I was sitting alone in the living room when Morris finally came home late. Welcome home. You're quite late, aren't you? I had to work, so it can't be helped. Morris spoke tersely and seemed ready to prepare for bed right away. Don't you have something to say? Today was my birthday, you know. Oh, was it? I forgot. I was hurt by Morris's words. Until last year, he'd give me not just a cake and birthday presents, but even a bouquet of flowers. Morris noticed my downcast expression and clicked his tongue, but then seemed to have an idea. Oh, I do have a present for you. Really? Where is it? Morris handed me what appeared to be an expensive brand lipstick. However, it wasn't even wrapped. Although it seemed to be a luxury item and even looked brand new. I appreciate it, but this shade is a bit too young for me. Looking at the lipstick color and saying this apologetically, Morris grimaced. If you're going to complain, give it back so I can throw it away. No, you bought it for me, so thank you. Although he'd never given me lipstick before, I found it a bit odd, but accepted the gift nonetheless. Up until that point, I had always trusted Morris. About a month later, Morris said he was attending another conference and would be gone for 3 days and 2 nights in a different town. While Morris was away,
Andreas and I managed the animal hospital.
Morris sure has been enthusiastic about conferences and study sessions lately.
Well, it's not a bad thing to actively learn and acquire new knowledge.
I'm planning on retiring soon and having Morris take over the animal hospital. It's great that he wants to be a good veterinarian, but I hope he's not neglecting the family.
I hesitated for a moment at his words, but then quickly replied, "We're fine. I understand it's for his work."
He's lucky to have such an understanding wife.
2 days later, Morris came home, but as soon as he arrived, he began preparing to leave again, without even unpacking his travel bags. I was bewildered by his unexpected behavior, especially since I had prepared dinner for him. Without even giving me a glance, Morris hurriedly left. That's when Alicia came downstairs from her room.
"Mom, isn't Dad back?"
I rubbed Alicia's head gently and told her that her father had some errands and had to go out again.
Boring. He was away for work, right? Does he have a present for Alicia?
We'll have to ask when he gets back. I told Alicia this, and then headed to the kitchen to prepare dinner. In the living room, Andreas was relaxing, but he looked deeply perplexed by Morris's actions. It was only a few minutes later that something else happened.
"Mommy, look, I found a balloon."
Alicia burst into the living room, her voice bubbling with excitement. Did we even have a balloon in the house? Just as I thought that and turned to look at Alicia, I froze. What Alicia was holding was unmistakably an adult's... Well, you know.
"This thing is all sticky."
Alicia said that as she blew into the elongated balloon and played around with it. Andreas was staring at Alicia, his eyes wide open.
Marcia, you should really keep your marital aids hidden better.
That's not ours, I promise. We don't have anything like that. Alicia, I'll buy you a prettier balloon. Just give that to Mommy, please.
"Aw, why? It's fun."
I somehow managed to coax the object away from Alicia. To be clear, we hadn't used such an item since Alicia was born, so I was sure it wasn't ours. Alicia, where did you find this?
"It was in Daddy's bag. I was looking for souvenirs."
Hearing Alicia's mumbled words, I rushed to the entranceway. There was Morris's business luggage that he had left earlier, and his business bag was open. It must have been this that Alicia touched. Andreas had silently come up behind me, and we nodded at each other in understanding. Andreas told Alicia to go play upstairs with our dog Earl, and she reluctantly obeyed. After making sure Alicia went upstairs, Andreas and I carried Morris's business bag and carry-on case into a private room on the first floor. We open it and are shocked. Inside are multiple so-called adult toys and provocative women's lingerie.
Marcia, you have no idea about this stuff, right?
No, none at all. I answer with a trembling voice. That's when I notice an unfamiliar laptop at the bottom of the case. It's not locked, so we open it. When we open the messaging app on the desktop, we see cringeworthy exchanges between a man and a woman. "Morris, had a great time on the trip. Let's do it again." Quickly followed by inappropriate content.
How did you find using that?
Morris asks, to which Carolina shamelessly gives her honest opinion. I get goosebumps the entire time I'm reading. Andreas and I look at the inappropriate items in Morris's bag as if we're looking at something filthy. While capturing the message screen with my shaky hands on my phone, I scroll back a little and find something even more crushing. It's a text sent on the night of my birthday.
Hey, listen to this.
Morris cheerfully begins, recounting an event to an eager Carolina. It turns out that the branded lipstick he gave me was originally a gift intended for Carolina. Apparently, Carolina rejected it, saying, "It's not my taste." And Morris decided to palm it off on me. Carolina found this amusing and kept making belittling comments like, "I wish I could have seen that old hag misunderstanding and looking foolish." As I read, a vein in my temple throbs with anger. Not only did he cheat on me, but he's also making a complete fool out of me. I'll never forgive him. Andreas leans in, his voice tinged with concern.
Marcia, you okay?
Yes, Andreas, but I can't let this go.
I get it. Anything I can do?
Thank you. Would you mind helping me? Andreas nods, signaling the start of my plot for revenge. Andreas and I discreetly put everything back to normal to keep Morris from catching on. A few weeks later, Andreas had already told us he would be out for the night, so I let Morris know that I was taking Alicia back to my parents' place. "You'll be alone tonight, so please take care of Earl."
Sure thing. I'll even take him to the grooming salon. Take care.
Morris, clearly in a good mood, sees us off and stays home alone. Several hours later, while at my parents' house with Alicia, I get a call from Andreas.
Marcia, they've entered the house.
Actually, Andreas staying out was a ruse. We suspected that if we left, Morris would invite Carolina over. Sure enough, it happened just the way we thought. I left Alicia with my mom and headed back to our home, the battleground. When I arrived, Andreas, now acting as a stern lookout, was waiting.
Morris and Carolina entered the house about 40 minutes ago.
I guess it's time. Let's go. Andreas and I quietly unlocked the door and entered the house. The moment we did, we heard voices we shouldn't have. They were coming from everywhere in the house. We rushed to the living room, and there he was, Morris, in the middle of something with a woman I didn't recognize. I quickly raised my camera and took a series of photos.
Hey, stop! What are you doing?
Noticing us, Morris pulls away from Carolina and reaches for my camera. But Andreas stops him. I take the opportunity to gather the clothes scattered on the floor. "Hey, give those back!" Carolina cries out in panic. I snapped back at her. "I think we've got a lot to talk about first. Sit down." Overwhelmed by my fierce demeanor, Morris and Carolina reluctantly sit down on the floor. "So, what's going on here, Morris?"
It's a misunderstanding. Just a lapse in judgment.
"Really? Cheating in our own home, huh? And who's this woman?"
She's, Earl's groomer?
That's when it clicked. I finally recognized Carolina. She worked at the grooming salon where we take our dog Earl. Morris usually handles Earl's grooming, so they must have met there. "I can't believe you're cheating with someone like her."
Look, it's not...
Interrupting Morris's hesitant reply, Carolina raises her voice. "Enough, Morris. Yes, we're in love, just like you say." I was stunned by Carolina's bold proclamation. Then, Morris suddenly found his courage.
Carolina's right. I love her, and I'm going to divorce you and marry her, so get out.
"Yeah, you're old news."
We're going to revamp the clinic and bring in Carolina as the groomer. I'll be the one running the clinic anyway.
"Morris, you're so cool." Carolina looks at Morris with a smitten expression. I'll say it again. These two were putting on this whole farce while they weren't wearing anything. I turned my gaze to Andreas, who was standing with his arms crossed, watching everything unfold. Andreas finally spoke, his voice calm, but filled with anger.
We're done. Disowned.
For a moment, silence fell upon the room. Breaking it was Morris.
What? Dad? What are you saying? I'm your only son. You can't just do that. So what? In terms of veterinary skills, you're nowhere near Marcia. And you think you could be the clinic director. Our parent-child relationship ends today. You're also fired from the clinic. Pack your things and leave.
As Andreas firmly stated this, Morris's lips began to quiver.
So what happens to the clinic? You're going to shut it down? What do you think? Obviously, Marcia will take over.
Andreas, thank you. As I lowered my head to Andreas, Morris and Carolina were opening and closing their mouths, at a loss for words. Then I turned to the two who were visibly flustered. By the way, thanks for leaving tons of evidence on your laptop.
You saw it?
Turns out Morris's laptop contained not just text messages, but also many photos of them in the act. I transferred several of these photos to my phone and confronted them. I also have photos taken earlier, so we have more than enough evidence. I'll be demanding $30,000 in damages from each of you.
No way. I can't pay that.
Stop messing around. Hand it over.
Just as he yelled, Morris stood up, trying to snatch my phone away. Andreas tried to intervene, but then something unbelievable happened. Sensing the tension, our dog Earl growled and leapt at Morris, defending me. The scene seared into my memory like it was in slow motion. Earl jumped towards Morris, who was lunging at me, and bit down hard, where it hurts the most. Echoing in the room were Morris's cries of agony, and his affair partner, Carolina's look of astonishment.
Call an ambulance! Call an ambulance now!
Though a small dog, the damage Earl inflicted on Morris's sensitive area was severe. With Morris looking pale as a ghost, I calmly told him, "Oops, my hand slipped because I was so shocked. Just sent those compromising photos of you and Carolina to your friends and her workplace."
What are you doing?
Never mind that. Call the ambulance.
Amid the chaos, the ambulance Carolina called arrived. Morris was taken away, clutching his privates and still in his birthday suit. Andreas and I watched, expressionless. Later on, we got Morris to sign some documents, and our divorce was finalized. Thanks to the lawyer Andreas had gotten us, we received our settlement in no time. Andreas made sure to completely sever ties with my ex-husband, kicking him out of the home and the hospital. Regarding the accidental photo I sent, well, Carolina became the talk of her office and felt so uncomfortable she ended up quitting her job. As for Morris, his friends started looking down on him, and he found himself isolated. Oh, and by the way, it seems that Morris can't make much use of that part anymore, thanks to Earl's bite. Not sure if that was the cause, but Morris and Carolina eventually broke up. Carolina moved back to her hometown. As for my ex-husband, he's working around the clock in a far-off city to pay child support for our daughter. As for me, I continue to live with Alicia in Andreas's home while working at his animal clinic. I find myself giving Earl extra treats pretty often. Recently, Andreas formally asked me to become the clinic director, and I accepted. Moving forward, I'm going to give it my all, both at work and in raising my child.
Hey, did you go drinking again? It's the third time this week. When I come home and see that I have to deal with someone like you, an annoying old woman, I can't help but feel disgusted. I have to drink just to tolerate it. Lately, it's been every weekend, and now even on weekdays. Men have social obligations, you know. I work too, you know. Sometimes you should come home early and be a companion for Tom. What do I care? Taking care of the child is the wife's job. Lately, my husband and I have been arguing like this every day. We've been married for 12 years, and his habit of wasting money is a constant headache for me. I'm Kelly, 36 years old. I've continued working even after getting married. My husband is 2 years older than me. Since we aged together and he calls me an old woman, it naturally makes me think he's an old man. Even though I try not to retort in the same way to avoid escalating the argument, We still constantly disagree on matters related to money and our child. I work for a fairly large company, and they have a good maternity and childcare leave system. So my return to work after having a child went smoothly. I have no complaints about my job. My husband also works for the same company, but he changed departments after my return, so we rarely see each other at work. My husband is currently in the sales department, so he has more social commitments than me in the general affairs department. And I understand that he often can't leave work on time. But still, I can't help but think about it. My husband has never once helped with dropping off or picking up our child from daycare. Hey, why don't you pick up our child from time to time? That's your job. Besides, I never even wanted a child in the first place. But the child is already born. It's pointless to say that now. You said that seeing him would make me feel attached, but that is not true. I don't feel attached to him at all. He doesn't even like me. That's because you never play with him. Even when Tom tries to talk to you, you ignore him. I want to relax on my days off. I can't be bothered to take care of the child. Our only son, Tom, is now in the 4th grade of elementary school. He's at an age where he can understand many things. He's surely aware that his father is indifferent towards him. Tom used to talk to him a lot when he was younger, but my husband would just give short and dismissive responses. Hey, Dad, listen! What? I'm watching TV right now. Don't bother me. I'm sorry. Hey, you can't say things like that. Shut up! I'm tired from work every day. Unlike you in the general affairs department, sales requires a lot of consideration. Don't make me tired, even on my days off. It's the same old story. My husband is completely uninvolved in school events and parenting. He has never attended a parent-teacher day or a sports day. It feels like I'm practically a single mother. Even our son has stopped initiating conversations with his father. On top of that, my husband splurges on himself without buying anything for his son. He bosses around the house, and my frustrations keep growing. I try not to complain too much, but I can't help but do so. And there's a reason for that. Actually, when our child turned 3 years old, my husband's death came to light. Since we both work, we split the living expenses, so I didn't know how my husband was using his salary. But since our child was born, our living expenses increased accordingly. Naturally, our respective shares of the expenses increased as well. We had an agreement to deposit predetermined amounts into a shared account for living expenses. However, even though we only increased it by $200 since our child was born, my husband frequently failed to deposit money on the specified date. When I confronted him, it was revealed that he had debt before we got married. What's more, the debt was still close to $30,000. When I asked him what the debt was for, how much he has been paying each month, and when he expects to pay it off, he just laughed foolishly and said it seemed like it would never end. Well, I've been paying it off with revolving payments, so even if I pay, the balance doesn't decrease at all. What? For a moment, I couldn't believe what this man was saying. In short, he's been making purchases every month that exceed his payments, but because he pays it off with revolving payments, the amount he pays remains the same, and as a result, the balance hasn't been decreasing, but rather increasing over the years. I was filled with anger at how reckless he was. He didn't even have the awareness of being a father. To prevent further wasteful spending, I stopped all the credit cards he had at the time. Even though he grumbled quite a bit, I sternly asked him what he would do if the debt continued to increase and somehow managed to prevent him from using them. If it were money spent for the family, it would be one thing, but this was debt accumulated for his own luxury. It's only natural for an adult to take care of it themselves. However, because I wanted to repay it as soon as possible, I increased the monthly payment amount, so I ended up covering the majority of the living expenses. It has been 7 years since then, and the debt has long been paid off. Yet, the amount of money my husband contributes for living expenses is less than before. When I asked him to increase the money he covers for the living expenses, he came up with the excuse that I earn more and stubbornly refused to increase it. He thinks it's only natural for the one with a higher salary to contribute more as a family. My husband's sales performance is not great either. He's been left behind by his peers and is just rotting away, so he's not committed to his work. That's why he hasn't been promoted. I was promoted to the General Affairs Department manager 2 years ago. As a result, my salary increased compared to my husband's. However, my husband wasn't pleased with that either. I tried to give him advice to motivate him, but he didn't like that either. He said, "What do you know about sales? Don't meddle unnecessarily," and completely ignored my words. Since everything I said only led to arguments, I gradually became less inclined to say anything. Then, one day, my husband told me he was going back to his hometown for a high school reunion. To be clear, his parents had already passed away, and his older brother and his wife live in the family home. My husband and his brother don't get along well and have no interaction at all. They had a dispute over the inheritance when their father passed away 5 years ago. His brother and his wife had been taking care of my mother-in-law, who required nursing care for many years. My husband had completely stayed out of it. I also felt sorry about it, but I had work and couldn't easily go and help. Since our child was born, I had been handling most things on my own, so I couldn't visit my in-laws much, and my mother-in-law passed away 3 years before my father-in-law. That was 1 year before my husband's death came to light. So apparently, my father-in-law had left a will stating that all the assets should be left to my brother-in-law and his wife. I thought it was only natural and told my husband it was okay. However, my husband didn't like that and made outrageous claims. In the end, they reached an agreement to my brother-in-law paying the rightful share. But my brother-in-law got angry at my husband's attitude at the time and told him not to be involved anymore. Knowing all of that, I feel uncomfortable seeing my brother-in-law and his wife, and I haven't had any contact with them since my father-in-law passed away. With the money my husband received at that time, he settled his remaining debt. That's when I found out that even though he claimed he couldn't contribute to living expenses because he increased his revolving payment, he still had over half of the balance remaining. It was a ridiculous lie. He hadn't been contributing to living expenses under the pretense of increasing payments, but had been using it for his own entertainment expenses. It was absurd. When I complained about it, he shamelessly said, "Well, in the end, it got settled, didn't it? And it's because you stopped me from using my cards that my available money decreased. I have no choice but to get it from the living expenses." He completely brushed it off. That's how my brother-in-law cut ties with us. So even if he says he's going back to his hometown, there's no way he can stay at his family home. When I asked where he would be staying, he said he had booked a hotel nearby. It was somewhat sad to think that he couldn't even visit the house where he was born and raised, especially since he was returning to his hometown. However, I chose not to mention it and saw him off. "Daddy, aren't you leaving home today?" "Yeah, that's right." As I watched my husband happily leave, our son called out to him from behind. What's more, our son seemed somewhat pleased to know that his father wouldn't be coming home. It made me realize, once again, that my son didn't want his father to be around, and I realized that I felt the same way. Since it's Saturday and Mommy doesn't have work, why don't we go out and dine out? Really? Yeah. Yay! Feeling relieved that my husband isn't around, I started to think seriously about our future. But since that high school reunion day, my husband started going out more often. He goes out a lot, especially on his days off, and stays out all night more often. He seems unusually cheerful, and he keeps his cell phone close to him, whereas before he used to leave it lying around on the table. It seems like he even takes it with him to the bathroom and shower. It's suspicious, no matter how you look at it. Hey, you have been going out more often lately, haven't you? Where do you go? Just thought I'd work out a bit, so I've been going to the gym on my days off. You know, when you're in your late 30s, your physical strength starts to decline. Oh, really? Do gyms have accommodations too? No, but sometimes I end up having drinks with friends all night. When you are in good shape, you can drink more. I see. Are you going to keep exercising and play sports with Tom too? Yeah, that could be an option. His eyes were evasive. I looked at him with a cold gaze, thinking that if it was a lie, he could have come up with a better one. In my mind, my husband's affair was already confirmed. I could have hired a private investigator, but for the time being, I decided to follow him when he goes out. My husband boarded the train and got off at the station near his parents' house. There, a young woman was waiting in a car, and my husband happily got into the car. Since his behavior had changed after the reunion, I had assumed the woman was a former classmate, but she now clearly appeared to be in her 20s. Nevertheless, I couldn't help but think. He spends recklessly, doesn't spend time with our son, and now I suspect he's cheating. It has become ridiculous to even be together. I made up my mind to leave my husband and started preparing for it. Well, I'm heading out. I might stay at a friend's place tonight. Oh, I see. Take care. It was the perfect opportunity, or so I thought. However, just then, I discovered that my credit card was missing from my wallet. I remember having it there until yesterday. Since I hadn't taken it out or used it, I couldn't think of anywhere I might have lost it. I immediately contacted the credit card company and reported it as lost. They asked me for the last time I used it, but I couldn't remember exactly when it was. I checked the transaction records on my computer and provided them with the information. Fortunately, they informed me that it hadn't been used since then, so that was a relief. I hadn't lost it or taken it out of my wallet, so why did it disappear? There was only one answer, without even having to think about it. My husband must have taken it from my wallet. It was the only explanation I could come up with. I thought that my husband would do it. For the past 6 months or so, my husband had been receiving collection letters from various credit card companies. I guess his own cards had reached their credit limit. When he settled his debt, he must have secretly applied for new cards, and not just one, but several. I had chosen to ignore it, thinking that since he would be the one paying it off, there was no need to say anything. But stealing someone else's card? That just makes him a plain thief. In any case, I'm glad I noticed it early. I started packing my husband's belongings right away. I know where he is. I had a private investigation agency find out who my husband's affair partner is. She's a 26-year-old woman who lives near his parents' house. She's about a decade younger than my husband. According to the investigation report, the woman he's been seeing is divorced and apparently moved back to her parents' house last year. Scott probably met her while she was working at the business hotel, where he stayed for a high school reunion. They lived in the same neighborhood and knew each other by sight, so they might have had an enjoyable chat. Scott has been frequently visiting her parents' house. He has known her parents by sight since he was a child, so maybe he feels comfortable going there. But do her parents let him stay over, even though they know he's still married? Well, that doesn't matter. I loaded Scott's belongings into the truck that arrived shortly and sent them off. Next up is our turn. I've canceled the credit card. Shall we move out too, Tom? Yeah, let's do that. Tom seems quite excited. When I told him we're going to live separately from his father, he responded, "Absolutely!" Just as Scott had long ceased to be my husband in my heart, he had ceased to be a father in Tom's eyes. I regretted that I didn't make this decision sooner. By nightfall, we had moved in our new place. We had completely moved out of the house we had been renting, turned off all utilities, and returned the keys in the presence of the real estate agent. While Tom and I were discussing what to have for dinner, a call came from Scott. "Hey! What the hell is this? Why are you sending me my stuff? Everyone here is shocked." "Well, you seem to be spending a lot of nights there. I thought it would be convenient if you had your personal belongings there." "Stop kidding! Because of you, now Marilyn's parents know that I'm still married. You put the divorce papers in the shipment. Anyway, how did you know where I am?" "I hired a private investigator." Scott seemed to think his affair was still a secret. I was taken too lightly. "Your actions are obvious. I was certain about the affair, but I didn't want to bother investigating who the woman was, as I also have a job. Besides, I wanted solid proof." "Proof? It's better to have evidence of the affair to get as much educational expenses for our son as possible." "When I come home, you'll pay for this." "Home? Where's that?" "Of course, I mean our house." "Oh, I see. You still had the intention of coming back home. That's surprising." Just as the saying goes, it seemed like my husband Scott came back to our home the following day. He must have been shocked to see our old house. Despite the fact that I had sent him filled out divorce papers, it puzzles me why he would think that I would still be in that house. What's more, he tried to use my card today, and was embarrassed to find out that it didn't work. "Well, of course. I reported the card as missing. Oh, and I also reported it as stolen to the police." "What?" Scott's voice was high-pitched. It was obvious that he was anxious about possibly being arrested. But to tell you the truth, I wouldn't be satisfied unless he felt at least that much. I did report it to the police, but sadly, they said that as Scott was a family member, he wouldn't be charged with theft. Furthermore, according to the credit card company, if a family member living with you steals and uses your credit card, it's considered the card owner's responsibility, so the charges won't be waived, which means that I have to pay. I wish I had noticed before it had been used. Scott's infidelity was proven, and the divorce went smoothly. I reported my divorce to the company. As my last name would change, it's a rule to report it as soon as possible when a divorce happens. Incidentally, when I was asked the reason, I slipped out, "Because of Scott's infidelity," and the news quickly spread throughout the company. As a result, Scott has earned the scorn of his colleagues and seems to be getting a lot of cold looks. Furthermore, our company has strict ethical guidelines, so Scott has been demoted and reassigned to work in a branch office. Up until now, I had been paying for most of our living expenses, so naturally, if he continues to spend money as he did before, he will run out. He seems to have finally realized this. In addition to being demoted and having his salary further reduced, he seems to be living in poverty due to having to pay child support, and for the lavish spending he did with his own card. He's been late with his payments. His car has been suspended, and he can't get a new one because he's failing all the credit checks. He contacted me asking to lower the educational expenses for our son, but I couldn't care less, and there's no way I would lower it. Naturally, I firmly refused. Then he had the audacity to say that he broke up with the woman he cheated on me with and wanted to reconcile with me. That's even more unthinkable. "Never contact me again," I said, and hung up the phone. The woman Scott cheated with not only knew Scott was married, but also hadn't told her parents. It seems that her previous divorce was due to her own infidelity as well, and her parents were furious when they found out. They disowned her and kicked her out of the house. Whether she got my contact information from Scott or not, she also directly called me to ask me to reduce the educational expenses for our son. It's simply unimaginable that she would even come to me with such a request. I refused, naturally, and she was sobbing on the other end of the line. Oh boy. I truly realized how tough being divorced is. Even so, now I'm living a very enjoyable life every day with my son, Tom. Tom seems to be much more relaxed and happier than when his dad was at home. If I had thought from the beginning that he wasn't there, there wouldn't be anything to expect. So it's truly refreshing. I plan to keep working hard at raising my son and my job from now on.